We can't remain the same and expect our lives to be different. So if you want something you've never had, you've got to do something you've never done.
This is I Did It. It's insights from people who have done something they never thought they would do. Today's guest is the author of Change Isn't Hard. Well, I think change is hard, but that's not the title. It's a practical playbook for people-centered change communication. She is a speaker. She is a facilitator. She is a consultant of all things change, internal and crisis comms. And get this, she's an international award winner. Welcome, Mel Loy.
Thank you, Julian. I'm excited to be here. Big fan of yours.
Let's jump into it. I want you to set up your story for us in a way that we can launch into finding out about you and how you might have done something that you never thought you would do.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I started off in the world of corporate comms kind of accidentally, which I think a lot of people do. It was back in the early 2000s, and I was studying journalism. I'd actually just finished a journalism degree and took off overseas because I was kind of done with study. And at the time, if you'd told me that I was going to end up in change communication, I would have just looked at you like a deer in the headlights, just like, what is change communication? Like, it wasn't even a thing at the time. And a lot of journos or people who did journalism ended up in comms because there just wasn't a lot of jobs in journalism, to be honest. And so from there, I kind of just accidentally ended up in corporate comms roles. And over sort of 20 years or so, I worked in healthcare, construction and mining, early learning, financial services, Queensland Police Media. So a lot of different scenarios, but built a lot of skills over that time and kind of found myself really starting to specialize in internal and change communication. Again, didn't even know that was a thing 20 years ago. And I'm glad that it has become a thing, because a lot of the time, internal comms in particular wasn't really valued. It was considered kind of the poor cousin of external comms. But I've seen a real switch in the particularly last decade, into businesses, C-suite really valuing the role of internal comms in terms of engagement, driving change, strategy. People are starting to realize your reputation starts from within. And so it's really been nice to see that shift.
All right. So you were working within organizations and now you're not within an organization. So what happened there?
So what happened was COVID. So 2020, I was working for a large financial services organization, insurance and banking, in corporate comms, supporting the CEO and what we called the enabling functions, which is a terrible name, but essentially shared services. So I was leading the team that looked after the internal comms around that and the crisis comms. So March 2020, my life just got sucked into this vortex of crisis comms. And, we all remember everything changed day by day, hour by hour. So about 6 months into that, we had a leadership change. And to be honest, I was pretty burned out. I'd had enough. And they decided to do a restructure, and they weren't taking voluntary redundancies, but I kind of went, if you need a volunteer, I'm over here and ready to go. So thankfully, I got a redundancy and decided to just take a few months and try this freelancing thing. And I figured if it didn't work out, I would just find another job. I had enough experience to be able to do that. And as it was, it worked out. It got very busy very quickly, but I never imagined myself running a business like I do today. It was something that I'd never even considered. I always thought business was for people who were good with numbers. And, being a words person, you'll hear this from a lot of comms people, I'm sure, I'm not a numbers person, I'm a words person. And actually, it's so much more than that. Understanding the numbers is important, but it's really about relationships, and it's really about delivering quality work and, backing that up and being, I guess, getting the confidence to promote yourself as well. That's a big thing I hear from people just starting out, that it feels uncomfortable to promote yourself, and getting comfortable with that as well was quite a change for me. So yeah, that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing.
I was just listening to a podcast yesterday with Simon Sinek, and who is, He's a very, very well-known and high-level thought leader, on
The why
leadership and
guy,
yeah,
what I
the
call
why
him.
guy. So I mean, but the point is, he's a big player. Well, what he was saying in this podcast is that he sits in meetings with people who are all talking about finance and numbers, and he closes his mouth and he says nothing because he's so embarrassed. He says, I don't understand anything about money. I don't have financial literacy. And from the
Mm,
outside, you would think so. You would think because I've got this level of exposure, and and he plays with high level players.
mm,
And it's really interesting because everyone carries a secret. Everyone has a weak spot. It's like it's like a little hedgehog or a porcupine. You pick them up and they immediately go into a ball to protect this vulnerable part. And
mm.
we've all got it. And it was such a good reminder that if you're thinking of doing something different, of making a change in your life, and you're telling yourself this story, it's only me who's, like a weak in this area. It's not true. Everyone's
Mhm.
carrying a secret.
Absolutely. And, a big part of this too, I think, comes back to that imposter syndrome. It is a very real thing. And about a year or so ago, I was at a workshop and they had a business psychologist come in and talk about imposter syndrome. And I thought, no, I don't have it. I'm feeling pretty confident. But then she talked through the different types of imposter syndrome too. And one of them is lucky. I'm just lucky. And that's when I realized, oh, hang on, that's me. I really went, oh, I just got lucky. I was just lucky that things worked out. And actually, when I think about it, it wasn't. It was 20 years of building relationships that enabled me to have a client base straight away, to be able to continue to get work in. And it's a lot of hard work behind the scenes to stay on people's radars and be the person that they think of when they need help with comms or change too. So, it was something in my own mind I had to grapple with as well. And everybody I speak to has the same thing. And as you say, some people are just, I think, more public about it than others.
I think luck is hugely important. I think, you go to you take any group of business people, anyone who's been successful, and ask them how lucky they were. They'll go, no, it was all hard work. You give them 3 or 4 wines and ask them the same question, then they'll actually tell you how lucky they were. Now, that's not to dismiss that, of course, that you've got to
Mm,
prepare for that. Everyone's the 20-year overnight success. It's what it takes, but luck plays a huge part of this. But what's important to also realize that, okay, if you are lucky, be a little bit humble about it. But also, if it doesn't go your way, don't beat yourself up too
mm,
bad over this, because it is part of the game. And have a pity party for a couple of days, and and we all do that. But you've got to pick yourself up, and you've got to get back into it, because what's that saying? You double your success rate when you double your failure rate, and you've just
mm.
got to factor that into this process.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. When you start a small business, expect that there's going to be ebbs and flows. I think if you expect it, it's not a surprise. So therefore, it doesn't feel as awful, I suppose. It doesn't feel as uncomfortable because you're like, okay, well, this is just part of it. And you can plan for those moments there where work is going to be a bit quiet. You can think in advance, okay, if that happens, what will I do? What's my plan B? And I think you've just got to keep that in mind. It's not going to be smooth sailing. I was saying to somebody the other day, you do expect ebbs and flows with small business, but I find the ebbs are very ebby and the flows can be very flowy. And there's not always a lot of calm, still flowing water through that. So you just have to be willing to get outside of the comfort zone either way. There's pros and cons to both of those situations. When you're in a quieter period, well, that's time to work on your business. It's time to do the things that you've been wanting to do for a while, but you haven't had the chance to do. And then when it's really, really busy, that's great. But right now, I'm finding that I'm not having the time to do that work. So yeah, there's pros and cons to it. You've just got to be willing to be adaptable. And I mean, that's life in general, right? We live in a world of ambiguity now in a world of fast moving change. You just have to get more comfortable with that ambiguity, and know that there's always a plan B. If something goes wrong, okay, what will you do? There's always a plan B.
Have you found this, that when you speak to people who have made a change, they've taken what seems a big risk in their life, even if it doesn't work out for them in the immediate sense, it always seems to work out in the long run. And I speak to so many people who go, it's not what I thought I would do, but I'm so glad I made the move anyway.
Absolutely. I don't know anyone in my current world who hasn't started their own thing and regretted it, whether it ended up working out or not. I don't like the word failure. I think if you learned something from that experience, then that's not a failure. It's an experiment, right? It's an experiment. Did it work out? No, but that doesn't mean I didn't get anything out of it. So I always think most people that I speak to are like, it's the best move I've ever made. And I remember when I was leaving my corporate job, somebody there said to me, I don't know anybody who's left this place who hasn't gone on to do better things. And they were absolutely right. And I also know that every time, my husband says this to me, every time you're worried about not having enough work, it floods in. So you just got to, keep pushing, keep the hustle going, because that pays off.
Yeah. So let's just go back to when you were in university and you were studying journalism. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe with an idealistic view of, like, how you could use journalism
Oh, God,
to,
yes.
yes, to make the world a better place. And then, you find yourself in organizational communications, which is completely different in a sense that your job is to massage a message and make it palatable in a sense. How do you deal with that change from the idealistic view to real world?
Mm. Yes, when I started uni, so for context, I finished school when I was 16, so I was quite young. And the whole of first year uni, I was underage. I was 17. So, got up to lots of mischief as well, which didn't help. But yeah, I was going to be a foreign correspondent, Julian. I was going to travel the world and report from war zones and all that sort of stuff. And it was probably about 12, 18 months into that degree that I went, I don't want to be a journalist, because the reality is that you're sent out to do some really horrible things a lot of the time, like death knocks. Somebody's child has just died and they want you to go knock on that person's door. And that did not sit comfortably with me. And the reality is also that to get into the field, you've often got to cut your teeth out at some, you know, small newspaper out in the outback somewhere for years and get treated like dirt for a while before you can make your way up the ranks. And at that point, that's when I went, okay, I still love writing. I still love the process of telling stories. I loved radio. That's what I majored in. But I also then added an arts degree so I could study politics and English literature as well, just for a bit of fun. Uh, and then, so I think I'd already kind of made a bit of a transition out of I guess, the hardcore journalism into more of the storytelling. And that is what a lot of corporate comms is. It's being able to tell a strategic story, something that inspires people to a purpose, to a reason why they're asking you to do something. And that's a big thing that we talk about in change comms. You have to give that compelling case for why. A list of dot points is not going to cut it. So you have to be able to tell a story that speaks to hearts and minds. So to me, there are definitely elements to it. You've got to find a story and you've got to tell it really well.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I'm really happy that you've found that joy in it. Just one thing I was thinking about when you were saying that you wanted to be a foreign, correspondent, and I was in the media for 25 years, and one of the reasons that I eventually left was that I got frustrated with being a spectator the whole
Mm.
time. And even though you were out there telling a story, I was always watching these people in front of my lens affecting change in the world and doing things. And it was one of the key drivers that went, no, I've just got to take that big step and do it.
Mm. And I do hear that from a lot of ex-journos that head into corporate comms. I think too, when you're working at a publication and there's that day to day, because I did do a little bit of journalism, so to speak, when I was in the UK. you're going from story to story to story. Sometimes you get lucky and you're able to follow something for a while, and do more of that investigative reporting and that sort of piece. But that's pretty rare these days because at the end of the day, the media needs to sell advertising.
It's a
And
sausage factory.
yes, yes. And so it's just okay. Who's got the latest thing? Just keep pumping it out. Whereas within an organization, you have that opportunity to see something through from end to end, to influence how people think about things. There's a real opportunity there. But what I like about the agency side of things is I get to do that, but in multiple different ways for different types of clients. So I'm not just doing it for a financial services organization. I'm doing it for them and also, a charity and a childcare organization and a insurance company. So there's still the opportunity to mix it up and keep it interesting, but you've got more skin in the game. And so I absolutely understand that point of view.
I want to ask you about learning. What's your view on learning, lifelong learning, and
Yes.
also as much as learning, mentoring and giving that back?
I love learning. Nothing excites me more. And that's why I'm doing another postgrad because I just am going down another rabbit hole of interest at the moment in behavioral science. But even just running my own podcast, I'm sure you get this too, that's a learning opportunity. You get on the people that you want to learn from. And I learn a lot that way. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of books. I go to events as much as I can, virtual and otherwise. It's just, I love learning new things. And that's what I look for in my peers as well, the people that become your tribe, but also the people on my team. I want people who are curious, who want to learn. And that to me is something that sets some people apart from others. There are people who are just happy staying in their lane, just doing the same thing over and over again. And that's great if it works for you. But I like to be surrounded by other learners. And in terms of mentoring, I think I'm at that point now where I am doing a lot more of that, especially through my role with IABC, the International Association of Business Communicators. So I've been president of the Queensland chapter for a couple of years and have been involved in other ways as well. And that's given me a real opportunity to be able to mentor some younger people and also just reach out to them as well. Like just last week, one of our younger members reached out to me because he was struggling to find a job. And so, helped him get some contacts and, those sorts of things. And I think there is almost an onus on us as we become more experienced. If we want to lift the way our profession is seen and valued, then we have to help younger people get there because they're the next people coming through. And I'm hoping that with each generation, with each new blood that comes in, it just gets better and better.
I like this idea of it's described as plus minus equal, where you've always got someone ahead that you're trying to learn from. You're always
Mm.
sharing with someone who's coming up behind you. And then you're sharing and learning side by side with peers
I
along the
love that
way.
concept.
Yeah, it's nice. It's just it's just easy way to remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is part of the gig that we sign up for.
Mm.
And talk about people wanting to get in contact with you and learn
Mm.
more from you. Where can they find you, Mel?
Look, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there very easily. On Instagram, I'm heymel.coms. So again, easy to find. And I do a lot more live stories and those sorts of things on there. Not lately because I've been so busy, but I hope to get back to doing that. Or just email me at hello@heymelcoms.com.au. I'm always happy for a chat. You can pick my brains, more than happy to.
Thanks, Mel. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Julian. So have I.